All right, good morning, everybody. Today I want to talk about an issue that does not get enough attention, I believe, at school in the classroom. So, the first I want to provide three examples, two from my own teaching experience and one from my own daughter. The first one, I was at some Lukio and I was just doing some internship or something, and one of the girls, she gave a presentation, and the presentation just started really badly. Um, she couldn't remember what she wanted to say. She was clearly nervous, and it was a mess. So I interrupted her. I said, like, look, stop, breathe, calm down. You know this stuff. Um, If it doesn't work, you know, we just sit down, we train a little more, and we take it again. Now, with that in mind, go. And it was completely different. She quickly gained confidence and she gave a fantastic presentation. I also had here, when I was already working here, we had an English test with the CM1 or CM2 students, I don't remember. And one of the girls, she very good at English, like she kind of handed her test back after just like 5 minutes or so. I just briefly, I glanced at the test and I saw, okay, too many mistakes. And I could see the girl, maybe she wasn't crying, I don't remember, but she was clearly upset and clearly in distress. So I said, I told her, look, first I said, look, I know your level. Like this test is easy for you. Okay. So you shouldn't have any mistakes in this test. I also said, look, the idea of the test is to confuse you a little bit. Like it wants to test you and make you a little bit uncomfortable. So don't let it don't let it confuse you. And I told her, let's forget this one, sit down, relax, calm down. You know the answers to these questions. And when you're ready to take the test, you come and get a new paper. Excuse me. And well, she went away, and I don't know, a couple of minutes later, she came back and she said, okay, she's ready. I said, you sure? Yep. I gave her the test. It took her 5 minutes. She handed it back in. And as I expected, no mistakes. And the last example is my own daughter. She had a math test, and it it wasn't that great, but she's not that great at math. And we looked at the one exercise, and I wanted to see where is the problem. And this was like, I don't know, some rivers like the Amazon, the Nile, and other rivers, and you had to there was a text, and you had to add some of the rivers together and then answer some questions. So first I separate the text from the math. So I want to understand, is the math the problem or is the text the problem? So the same additions that were asked in the text, I just took the numbers out and I gave, I don't know, like 5,430 kilometers plus 4,750 kilometers. And I let her calculate, like add those numbers, and they were correct. Okay, so that tells me she understood the math is fine. And then okay, like let's check the text. Does she understand the text? And I gave her the same text, but I changed the numbers. So instead of there being complicated numbers, I made the numbers very easy. So the Nile was 5,000 kilometers, the Amazon was, I don't know, 6,000 kilometers, and the whatever. So, and again, she then read the text and did the calculations, and they were correct. So that told me she also understands the text. So she should understand both, even when they're combined. And then I said, well, it seems like you didn't even try. Like, because you got slightly confused by the test. Again, that's kind of what tests are supposed to also do, like to challenge you a little bit. But it kind of, you had such a confidence issue that when you didn't understand it immediately, you gave up before even really trying. So the question becomes, like, what happened to all of these? Well, okay, they happened all to be girls, but of course it can also happen to boys. Um, what happened was that panic took over. Like, and the question is like, why are we taking tests? We take tests to evaluate the level of our students. But if they're in a state of panic, as these three individuals were, we are not really evaluating their level. So we have to first get them out of this state of panic, let them perform properly, and then we can do a proper evaluation. So in my classroom, both in the English classroom and the physical education classroom, I do teach the kids, and we emphasize it, and it comes up many times throughout the year, uh, that fear is normal. There's nothing we can do. Everybody is afraid of certain things, and we also go deeper. We say like, actually, it's a good thing. It's a good thing to be afraid of stuff. I don't know. If you are climbing up somewhere really high, it's good that you're starting to be afraid because it is becoming more and more dangerous. So it's a good thing in this example, and usually fear is keeping you more alert, you're more concentrated, and you're at peak abilities. So, but what we're trying to avoid, and this we can influence, is that this fear turns into panic. And we do not want to have panic, because panic, it makes us do dumb stuff. Like, because we're not thinking anymore. The brain is not working anymore when we're in a state of panic. We know this. I mean, we train fire drills. These routines are supposed to keep us calm. Everybody understands what they're doing. So we're not getting into this state of panic where we're doing dumb stuff. But the same applies, it's not just in fire drill situations, it applies to all the subjects in all kinds of situations, especially in test situations. So we have to, fear is fine, but we have to manage fear so it does not turn into panic, because when it is panic, the brain is not working as it should be. So this brings us to the question of how to manage fear. Because it has to be managed. You cannot, like it. I want to provide another example. It does. You cannot, like, this cannot be forced. It cannot be. It does not work. It just doesn't work. The funniest example was when we went swimming with some of the students, and it turns out that some of the students were afraid from jumping into the pool. So, and if a student was afraid and then they kind of tried to jump, but they kind of like, okay, I will just do it. I will push past that fear barrier. What comes out is hilarious because it's just like, it's like the body, it just shuts down. You like your body kind of is so afraid that it shuts down. It just looked so funny, and it was not ideal. So you can't like we cannot force the child just or just also any human being. We cannot just force it, but we can manage it and we can slowly push past our boundaries. So let's go through these. So one, like the kids, they already get me in CP, and then I'm with them until CM2. So over the years, we build trust. And again, this topic of fear and panic, we talk about it on a regular basis, and we build trust from early on. Uh, Another way is like I try to reduce the stakes. So I evaluate in like the normal, everyday, natural situations. So already that there's no stress. And I believe like, especially in such a small classroom, it's the best, the truest form of evaluation. Like I really get to know their level. Or during PE, we evaluate during a game, and I tell them like, look, you don't fail. Like a lot of the evaluation again, why are we uh, like evaluating and taking like these kind of tests or be in those test situations to so that I understand, I as a teacher, I understand what is the level of my students, like where do they need help? Um, what do we need to train more? Like that's the idea. And yes, also sometimes we do um, train like how to take tests, how to be in these stressful situations, so that they kind of get to know because that's also important because they'll be taking tests throughout their school life. Yeah, one thing that needs to always be emphasized, it is perfectly safe to fail. So in PE, this might be, they're falling down, but then we have the mats and they won't hurt themselves. So I will give another example in a moment and I will go a little bit deeper. But in English, it might be um, they have to write a text. And I know you don't know all the words. I know you're going to make mistakes, but just focus on writing the text. And it's safe to make mistakes. Mistakes are not a bad thing. Again, I will come back to that uh, later during the video, and I will actually make another video on mistakes. So there is this comfort zone. We all have it, all the students have it, all the adults have it. So what I do with the kids on a regular basis is we find what's the edge of that comfort zone? Where where's the border between this is what I'm comfortable with and this is what I'm not comfortable with? And the best is to take the climbing example. So usually we have children who are afraid of heights, and then it's like, okay, like let's find that edge first. Like, can you stand on a chair? No, too high, too scary. And then we find something lower, like there's a block. How does that feel? Yeah, all right. So they stand on the block and they they just observe how does it feel, how afraid are they? And then it's like, okay, let's evaluate some risks. How you can see the mats that are here, okay? So there, if you fall, you're not going to hurt yourself. Then I tell the students also, again, rationally, like, look, this block you're standing on, it's maybe 30 centimeters high, you're not going to hurt yourself. And look, also, I'm standing right next to you. I can give you my hand. I can catch you. You understand? You're not going to hurt yourself. Or if you're going to fall, I can catch you. And then it's like, okay, well, with all this new information, how do you feel? We check. And then I ask, okay, well, you remember that chair you were too afraid to go on beforehand. But now, knowing all of this and maybe going up the chair with me, do you think you can do that? And then it's either yes or no. And if it's yes, we go there. And if it's no, then we work on something smaller. But slowly and surely we push, and then I don't know. Then if their students is on the chair, then like, how do you feel? So now I'm holding you, but let's say, do you think you could let go of my hand? Yeah, no, and again, it's a slow process, but we can go past these boundaries, and the students oftentimes they need help, or certain students need help, other students they don't need help. Um, yeah, but I mean this it applies to like the climbing example is very easy, but the same things happen in the classroom, in the English classroom, and it's like, okay, just give me your best text, you know? I just want to understand what is your level. Don't worry about making mistakes. Just, give it your best shot. And again, we're like, I tell the students like if like for the analogy, if you fail, which you can't, because I just find out what your level is, but in your mind, if you're failing, you're not gonna break a leg. So just make explaining those students the consequences, the environment, that everything is safe and they cannot hurt themselves. And this helps them to deal with fear and so that it does not become panic. Yes, stress factors, one very big one, very prominent, and again, not healthy, is like some of the students, they're just comparing themselves to the other students. And then it just eats at their confidence. They're not even trying. They give up easily. And again, from the beginning, we explain, we talk about it, and we say, like, focus on your own strength. Everybody has their own strength, and you don't know anything about the other students. What is their background? And maybe one of their parents is speaking English. You don't know that. So obviously their English is better. That doesn't mean that they're smarter. It's just they have a big different background. But then also talent does exist, and some are more talented when it comes to language learning, and that's okay. And you have some talents in another subject, so that's just normal. Um, yeah, we just talk, and this really needs to be stressed regularly because they are so used to mistakes being a bad thing that I have to explain to them, no, for us in our classroom, it's normal, it's important, and actually it's good. And because I explain to them what does it mean making mistakes, I want them to push themselves to do something that seems too difficult. So in a way, obviously you're going to fail because it is too difficult. But what we often understand in failure or as failure is actually uh, learning more efficiently. So when we do all of this lets me really push the students to take on challenging projects, like to put them into this environment that is too difficult, to demand of them to write a text that is way beyond their abilities. It has spelling mistakes, it has grammar mistakes, it has vocabulary mistakes, but I want them to push that boundary of where they're at as much as possible, uh, to try to deal with a text that is where they understand only 50% of the words. But I believe that working with such a text that is just more interesting is better than working with a text that is closer to the student's level, but that is just so boring. And I have seen it also, like this is the feedback also I get from the students. That is my own experience as well. I prefer reading a book that is it's really interesting, that rather than a fake text in a textbook that is just not interesting. And yeah, I have seen so many other classrooms where children, again, I mean, the stuff they read is just not interesting, and they read it. I mean, who has not seen the books that the students read the same textbooks for God knows how many years, or an updated version of the textbook, which they change a couple of exercises and then they call it an update. And I have seen children, as when I was doing teaching assistants or just also doing my internships, they write texts that are way below their level. And that is just, I will go again, I will go into making mistakes in another video, but for now that's it on fear and panic.